So, welcome back. We're moving into now just 3 user papers. There are 2 from Infineon, 1 from Francois. First of all, we have a talk from Doulos. If you ever met John Ainsley, he doesn't look a lot like Francois, but unfortunately John missed his flight, and so Francois is going to give the talk for him on Easier UVM. So, as I said, in Munich and UK, there's a lot of debate about UVM and adoption of UVM and how difficult it is to adopt UVM. Doulos have a way to make UVM easier, which Francois is going to present on behalf of John Ainsley.
Okay, so as Mike said, I'm not Doulos, I'm TVS, but I'm representing Doulos here. So John Ainsley, the CTO of Doulos, had this concept of Easier UVM. Unfortunately, he couldn't come today, so I'm going to present his slides. So the motivation, firstly the motivation of Easier UVM, why Easier UVM rather than the full UVM, and then we'll go a bit in the details. So why Easier UVM? So some people hate UVM, some people love UVM. They hate SystemVerilog or they love SystemVerilog for kind of the same reason. They hate SystemVerilog or UVM for the same reason some other people like it. It's a huge language, it's a huge methodology, there are lots of stuff, so they hate it because it's too much, or they love it because they can do everything with it. If John was here, he would say he hates it because it's a very big language, but he loves it because it makes Doulos busy on giving trainings. This is So UVM, U for universal and verification methodology. It's universal in the sense that it's supported by all major EDA vendors, but it also drives to mutually consistent SystemVerilog implementations and could do several things in the same way, different ways. There's one standard which is good because then as a customer we can choose to use UVM and then we can decide which EDA vendor to use. So it really helps UVM to be used across different customers, because then they don't have to decide which vendor, or they can actually use different vendors on the same project. Learning UVM itself is challenging, and that makes Doulos quite busy in giving trainings. First, if you want to go and learn UVM, you need to start with some Verilog prerequisite to go into a SystemVerilog training class. And once you know SystemVerilog for verification, you still need to learn UVM, which is still another 4 days. But then what's next? Which tool do I use? How do I start from my blank page to a full verification environment? Is there any guidelines? So these are the motivation of Easier UVM. So UVM has about 300 different classes. Some of them are not very well documented. The documentation doesn't answer everything. So there was a need to actually propose some guidelines to use UVM and start saying, okay, I need to do something. Where do I look at and how do I start? So Easier UVM has been proposed by Doulos first in 2011. I think that was in DVCon, something like that. The aim was to propose to people starting with SystemVerilog and with UVM with easier guidelines and one way of doing things to reduce the search of how do I do one thing, because there might be several possible ways of doing things. But Easier UVM is still UVM, so if something is not described in Easier UVM, I mean, you can still do your own implementation on top of it. Easier UVM does not restrict you to use the full set of UVM if you want to. But it does introduce things smoothly in the way that you start things as it is described, and then you learn UVM and you add your stuff on it. The second version of Easier UVM is about to be shipped in the next few months. It has the same principles, but it comes with a straight document with strict coding guidelines. It's very prescriptive in the way you write your code, so that if someone else is following the same guidelines, you know that both codes will be able to interact with each other. And it's also come with an automatic code generator that actually generates all the base classes that you need in your verification environment or verification IP. So the benefits is really to help you adopting UVM, learn UVM and avoid the pitfalls, because there are lots of traps you can fall into. But if you follow the guidelines, you will just avoid them. So there has been a report from Dulos customers that said that they actually saved 6 weeks by just following the guidelines. It also helps you using UVM consistently across different teams. And it reduces the burden of supporting UVM code because it's all done in the same way, so you know what you're looking at if you look at your code. It also comes with a code generator, which is going to be shipped soon. It is written in Perl. It's open source, so it's free. It will be free for download. It's open source. You'll be able to modify it and add your own set of constraints, a set of generation coding guidelines in the tool. So it can be modified the way you want. So just some examples of coding guidelines that are in the document. So it comes with guidelines how to actually code the transaction sequences, clocks, timing, all this kind of thing, all in the same way. It's mainly common sense. So most of this, you could say, okay, I could have done this, but at least it's written and you just have to follow the rules. It's much more prescriptive than the UVM documentation. The UVM documentation just gives you the classes and some examples, but doesn't tell you for one specific problem, how do I solve it? There are many ways you can solve it. Some coding patterns, for instance, where we see here what is followed to implement a component or a sequence item. So it just restricted to the minimum. It comes with the guidelines of which macros to use, which methods to override, because it's sometimes not really easy to say, okay, in this context I need to use this UVM macro and so on. It also comes with some proposal to build your verification environment. And this also helps reinforcing the Dulos training materials by saying, okay, we're giving training in this way, and we're proposing also you to follow these guidelines, and everything will be consistent. Some example of the code. I mean, there's not so much differences with what you would do here yourself. So, yeah. The code generation. So it's a tool, as I said, which is a Perl script that will generate all the basic classes and components for your verification IP. Always the same way. So if you have to start, okay. So if you start a new verification IP, I mean, there's probably 50% or 60% of the code which is always the same and just the UVM structure. So all this code will be generated for you. You will have placeholders to actually put your own code into it. And it also comes with examples how to then use your verification IP. So the placeholders and the examples, you will just replace them with your own code. So just an example here for SPI UVM sequence, what the tool generates for you. And an example where we see in a driver all the placeholder commands. So in the red square boxes, you just put your own code inside of the commands. And the rest will be a command structure. And for the test, so the test will be also generated for you, and then you just extend it as you want. Okay, so just because this is Doulos slides, so I have to talk about all the trainings from Doulos. So Doulos is not only UVM trainings, also lots of different languages trainings and our Cortex series trainings, System C, SystemVerilog, all this. Okay. Any question?
Any questions? You have a question? Oh, sorry.
Yes, okay. José Mongeon, ST, Microelectronics. This Easier UVM training, is that aimed at all the verification engineers we would have, or is it more suited towards the central team developing templates, test benches for other teams?
So if I understand the question is your UVM, should it be applied by a central team or by the engineers doing the actual work?
Yes, because I'm sure even with Easier UVM, there are some different variations possible in application of whatever principles you come up with. So is it better suited to be applied centrally by central teams, okay, or verification engineer? So
Easier UVM is mainly a coding guidelines. So it's supposed to be applied by kind of everyone who is using UVM, but you don't have to say this is the guidelines that will be followed by the entire organization. You can construct your own guidelines if you want to. But if you have a central team doing UVM, surely they should have guidelines, if not Easier UVM, guidelines of their own that they should promote across the different teams.
So maybe I can say something as well. So Easier UVM also is a subset of the main language. So what they've tried to do is take out some of the more complicated structures which they didn't think were particularly useful. And I think what we're finding in the industry is UVM, although it's called a methodology, isn't really a methodology. It's a set of libraries and guidelines. And most companies do something different with UVM. And so if you go from company to company, you'll see different ways that people write their test benches. And what people are finding is that people producing guidelines. So Doulos are producing guidelines. I'm not sure whether Accelera really want that, but I think the market's going to just take over from that point because nobody's going to standardize on the particular methodology. So I think within the market, you'll see people trying to sell their own methodology, which allows you to use UVM more easily. And your question specifically, I think you were also hinting that maybe some of the way we build our test benches, that maybe your central R&D department really needs the UVM specialists to build the drivers and lower layers of the UVM test bench, and then maybe the SOC people who are doing more use cases or more at the top level doing tests. So what we find also within companies, they tend to structure their engineers based on their skills and what level of UVM they need. So, and central, I know SD have a central R&D group who are maybe developing the VIPs, and then maybe the SOC teams are the ones that have the use case scenarios and have the real knowledge about the SOCs. Okay, so does that help? Okay. Do you want to more? Okay, yeah. And one other thing which somebody mentioned yesterday, maybe we have this debate later, was one company, that was ARM actually, that don't currently use UVM, and they have their own internal SystemVerilog test bench approach, which they're very happy with. This was the question yesterday, maybe not across the whole of ARM, but this person was, and they were debating whether to adopt UVM. And I think the general consensus of the Q&A session was that probably not at the moment, unless they've really got a need or something which their current solution isn't solving.
I have a question. I understood that you have a code generator, but what is the input of that generator?
So, as I said, I mean, I'm not Doulos. So first, I don't have all the full details, but my belief is that it's mainly the name of the components you want to build and some general inputs of the architecture of the components you're going to build. Then it provides you empty verification API that you then need to fill in with your own code for the monitors on the driver. So that you still need to code this part.
Thank you, Francois.